Hey, folks, Roland Martin here, broadcasting live from Las Vegas. I apologize for all the technical difficulties. We're operating on Plan C, but look, we are up and running. It is Thursday, April 18, 2019, and a jam-packed show. The Mueller report has been released with very few redactions. This is what we do know. Donald Trump is an absolute liar. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, an absolute liar. And also, Donald Trump has not been exonerated by Robert Mueller. We're going to break all of this stuff down for you, give you our perspective, again, on an unbelievably crazy day as Washington, D.C., all the talk about the Mueller report dealing with the issue of collusion, showing Russia interference. You name it, we're going to break it all down for you. So all of that, folks, coming up right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Also, we got some new polling data showing African Americans are very often deemed suspicious characters and not smart, also being harassed by cops. We'll break that down for you as well. Plus, Beyoncé, her new documentary, Homecoming. She performed at Coachella last year. Netflix is turning this thing into a documentary, and she talks about, again, the impact of HBCUs on her life and why she wanted Coachella to experience what it means to be black. And so we'll talk about that with our panel. Also, speaking of HBCUs, how university students are not happy with white gentrifiers walking across their campuses with their dogs, pooping all over the place. Hey, it's a college campus. We hear from some of those students. And also, Laura Ingraham, more nonsense from her. She got into a fight with Chrissy Teigen, the model, wife of John Legend. Christy fired back. I just love me some Christy. Folks, we're going to show all that for you. We got a great panel for you. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
All right, folks, Roland Martin here, Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm here in Las Vegas. It has been, of course, a crazy day. We've had lots of technical issues, but bottom line is we're here, we're live. Let's get this thing started. It's been wild in Washington, D.C., as Bob Barr had lots to say about the Mueller report. Then, of course, about 2 hours later, we actually got to see the Mueller report for ourselves. Here's what we do know. Bob Barr was lying to us in his summary. He took some liberties with the Mueller report. And folks have been talking about it all day. And we got a couple of lawyers here, former prosecutors, to talk about this report as well. But let's start this way. This is how the New York Times summed this whole thing up. They say, which is pretty interesting. While the report does not find that the president or his campaign aides had committed any crimes in their contacts with Russians, it lays bare how Mr. Trump was elected with the help of a foreign power when a federal inquiry was started to investigate the Russian effort. He took numerous steps to try to undermine it. Okay, y'all, that really explains the Mueller report there. And it's pretty interesting. But it also found that the Russians did indeed tap into some election offices in Illinois, also in Florida. And so, man, you talk about an unbelievable report here. And so we want to dig in with this report. So let's talk with A. Scott Bolden, a former chair, National Bar Association Political Action Committee, who joins us right now. And so I'm gonna start with you, Scott. I also am joined by Attorney Glenn Ivey, former state's attorney for Prince George's County, also former federal prosecutor. And so we also joined in studio by Greg Carr, Chair, Department of Afro-American Studies. He joins us as well. And Shireen Mitchell, she is social analyst and diversity strategist. So I want to start with our attorneys first. And so let me go to Scott. Scott, when you look at this report, when you look at what Mueller determined? First of all, he said he agreed. I guess he consulted with the legal counsel in the Department of Justice that the president cannot be indicted. So therefore, he's pretty much leaving this thing up to Congress as to whether or not they want to impeach Donald Trump for obstruction of justice. This report, more than 400 pages. Your initial assessment of what you read from Robert Mueller?
Well, I think the big thing that jumps out at me is the numerous attempts. I counted at least 10. There may have been 12 attempts to obstruct justice. You see, Donald Trump and his campaign knew that Russia helped him win the election because they wanted him to win on one hand. On the other hand, you got a willing participant, whether they were assets of Russia or Russia used them as an asset. But the 10 or 12 efforts to obstruct justice, firing Comey, pressuring McGahn, his White House counsel, to make false statements and to fire the special prosecutor, pressuring the attorney general to get back in the case, and using agents within the White House to do so. Mueller's decision that because these aides did not always carry out or weren't as effective in carrying this message forward, despite Donald Trump's own public statements about all of this, I got to tell you, it's very disappointing for this one reason. Obstruction of justice is one of the few federal crimes, if not only crime, that you don't have to complete to be guilty of it. The statute says attempt or obstruct justice. Under that scenario, those 10 or 12 efforts that documented by Mueller as Trump's efforts to obstruct justice more than qualify for an attempt to obstruct justice. And as a result, he could have easily been charged with these crimes, or Mueller could have easily said he should be charged with these crimes. That just didn't happen. And Barr, he just avoided all of that. He just ignored all of that and lied to us this morning.
Glenn Ivey, that point is really important. That first and foremost, Donald Trump tried to obstruct justice. Okay, I'm trying to understand, how do you have to fully prove that? Well, had they gone forward with it, it would have happened. He tried to do it. I mean, look, we can go down the list. He asked Comey to end the investigation. Misleading statements about Russian meeting. The firing of FBI Director James Comey. Attempts to fire Special Counselor Robert Mueller. Using Corey Lewandowski to oust Jeff Sessions. Talking to witnesses about testimony. Trying to get Jeff Sessions to unrecuse himself. Also, trying to tell Don McGahn to lie, and Don McGahn wouldn't do it, and he kept wanting him to lie. I mean, that's what Donald Trump was trying to do.
And then he tried to fire McGahn because he wouldn't lie. Don't forget that.
Glenn Ivey, go ahead. Hold on, Scott. Glenn, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a long list of misconduct for sure, and I think there's a lot for Congress to work with, and they're gonna do that. I think the House Judiciary Committee, in particular, is going to jump after it. But one thing that I thought was very surprising was the fact that Barr came out and said that there was no obstruction, there was no evidence of obstruction, even in the face of all the evidence that was there. It was a little disappointing, too, to have Mueller come out and tee it up, lay out all the evidence like that, but then pull back instead of go ahead and pushing it across the finish line. But clearly there's plenty for Congress to work with in the weeks coming up.
Well, and also what I thought was quite interesting is that when you start going through this and you're seeing his actions, his public comments, that anybody looking at this, Scott Bolden, can say, dude, you were trying to affect the Paul Manafort jury. You were trying to, you were making statements. Obstruction of justice was literally wide open. It was out in public.
Right. And so, this is for the political attacks. So, you have these pundits who try to seek through or sort through all of this. But what Mueller's report does is put it all to bed, put it all to rest. It's confirmation of the several leaks that we heard throughout the last year or two. It's confirmation that they believed and they followed Donald Trump when he said he fired Comey over the Russian investigation, when he told the Russian operatives in the White House that he fired Comey and that he was nuts or words to that effect. And so the value of the Mueller report is this isn't some fantasy where we're trying to figure out what's truth and what's fake and otherwise. Mueller confirms all of these bad acts in great detail with great reference points and citations. And so there's not much to debate here. The only debate is whether the president ought to be charged or not, whether Barr lied or not, and he certainly did. And then really the Justice Department and the criminal justice system, based on Barr's conduct, based on the president's conduct, and all those that would support him, took a real hit. It's a bad day for lawyers and lawyering, in my opinion, because justice did not win this time, that politics won this time, and that Trump and his supporters have just capitulated to lies, to fake news, the real fake news, and to winning, to the demise of the American institutions, justice, intelligence, and all that we stand for or want to stand for in this beautiful but imperfect country of ours. It's a sad day for all of it.
Glenn Ivey, Trump sent out this tweet saying game over. He was out there, talking about how no collusion, anything along those lines. But this is a damning report for Donald Trump. This is not a clear victory for him or his aides at all.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. At the same time, though, that politically, Barr running interference to the extent that he did, I think was helpful, delaying the release of the report so that the reporters hadn't had a chance to read it while Barr was doing his press conference. And then Barr still ended up walking away from tough questions that he got at the hearing, at the press conference. So we got off to a slow start, but I really do think it's going to be incumbent on Congress, the House in particular, to follow up on this and push it forward and make sure the public gets a chance to understand and digest all of what's in the report that lays these facts out. I think we have to pursue it.
A couple of our other panelists, again, Shireen Mitchell, social analyst and diversity strategist, and also Alexis Green, spoken word artist. I want to go to Greg Carr first, then I'm going to go to Shireen, then Alexis. Greg Carr, you have, first of all, you went to law school. You saw some tap dancing there by Bob Barr doing his best. Even Fox News, Chris Wallace said he sounded more like a defense attorney as opposed to the chief law enforcement officer in the country. And what's also amazing is that Bob Barr gave Donald Trump's personal lawyers access to this report before Congress and before the public.
Absolutely. I think it's remarkably consistent. Today was a very good day, I think, for possibly America. Besides the description, and once our faced with the fact that the law is not.
Hey, Greg, hold on one second. We're having an issue with your Skype. I want to go to Shireen. Shireen, if you can answer that particular question. Again, to see Bob Barr act as the defense attorney for Donald Trump and to give his personal attorneys access to the report before even members of Congress?
Yes. He's the AG. The AG is there to protect the American people. He has his own White House counsel. So it doesn't make sense that he would go to the White House counsel and ask them to take a look at this before anyone else gets to see it.
No. He didn't just go to the White House counsel. He went to Trump's personal attorney.
Yes.
His personal counsel.
He went to the White House counsel and his personal attorneys. He basically allowed all of them to get access to this information prior to it being publicized for anyone else to see. That in itself should be an alarm for all of us, because people just don't understand. He's acting as his defense attorney. He's not acting as the AG who's supposed to protect the lives and the laws of the land for the American people.
Alexis, got to ask you this here. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she now proven out to be a liar. She stood at that White House podium, and she actually said that she was personally aware of FBI agents who rose to the defense of Donald Trump. But now we know, based upon the Mueller report, she was a liar, that she actually made it up. She said, quote, the rank and file of the FBI had lost confidence in their directors. We've heard from countless members of the FBI. That was a lie. From the report, Sanders acknowledged to investigators that her comments were not founded on anything. As far as I'm concerned, Alexis, Sarah Huckabee Sanders should never be able to stand behind that podium as press secretary speaking to the public, because we now have it. She will lie to the American public space?
Yes.
I mean, I honestly think that's terrible to lie to the public, especially with a position like hers. I feel like at some point we have to look at these positions and think, where does the integrity come in terms of her position, in terms of Trump's position, everyone involved, really. I think there's a lack of integrity with everyone, and people are lying to protect their agenda, whether that agenda is to not look like a liar now or that agenda is to protect Trump.
Do you have me now?
All right, I think we have Greg Carr back. Greg, I want to ask you this here. The report explicitly states that the investigation did not clear Donald Trump. Quote, if we had confidence after a thorough investigation of the facts that the president clearly did not commit obstruction of justice, we would so state. Greg?
Yes. Are we there?
Yeah, you're here. Go ahead.
Okay. Dr. I think this is really
All right. So again, I'm still having some issues with Greg Carr. Scott, we're going to try to get that thing fixed. Let me bounce this off of Glenn and Scott. Scott, you first. Mueller also made clear that Donald Trump's people destroyed evidence, used encrypted app. And so if they were not forthcoming, he wanted Donald Trump to testify. He would only answer in written questions. Donald Trump also criticized Hillary Clinton for saying, I don't know, when she got interviewed by the FBI. He said the same thing nearly 40 times as well. But for the fact that evidence was actually destroyed, and Mueller basically says in the report, they could not get to the truth because information had been destroyed or encrypted apps used to hide information.
Yeah, in any other case in federal court or state court, that's obstruction of justice. And you could even be convicted for destroying evidence that you know is going to be used later on in a trial. So it is the height of hypocrisy on Trump's part and the depth of arrogance to be used for these negative political means. So this is not a full clearing of the president. What's important now is what happens next. Glenn Ivey says the Congress has got to pick this up. But remember, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York and the State Attorney General can both pick these cases up or this investigation up. They're investigating other things in regard to Trump's businesses, and these conclusions by Mueller, whether for whatever reason he didn't go further, there's still hope with those three institutions: the New York State Attorney General, the Southern District of New York, as well as the House Justice Committee. The Senate Justice Committee has said already from the senator from South Carolina, or rather North Carolina, that he has no interest in pursuing any of this as a supporter of Trump.
Glenn Ivey, your final comment.
Yeah, I think the challenge with the Southern District of New York is that their boss is Mr. Barr, who already said there's no obstruction. So I think it's really going to be up to Congress to push this forward, and the House in particular, because that's the committee the Democrats control. The Judiciary Committee in particular, I know, is going to go after this very aggressively. That's where the truth's going to have to be laid bare. And also, at the end of the day, 2020 is going to be the key. I don't think he's going to be impeached, but he needs to be beaten at the polls, and it's going to be critical for the Democrats to lay the groundwork for that.
We've got Greg Carr on the phone. So, Greg Carr, just your thoughts overall on this entire report now that we have, for the most part, the full Mueller report.
I think it's a great day, man. I think it's a great day because it has stripped the illusion that somehow the law or America's supposedly so great institutions can save it from the fact that human beings create institutions. The facade has been dropped. Volume 2, page 4, May 17, 2017, when the acting Attorney General for the Russia investigation appointed the special counselor, Donald Trump, made his confession. Oh, my God, this is terrible. This is the end of my presidency. I'm beat. In other words, he knows what he did. Now, is it illegal to receive emails from WikiLeaks if WikiLeaks did not, in fact, hack into the computers and the Russians did and gave it to them? No, it's not illegal. So Bob Barr is technically correct. But as you say, 12 of the 14 indictments are still secret. That's where a lot of the redactions are from. But at the end of the day, that whole report, up and down that report, as you said, This is an administration full of liars, full of people who are flouting Article 2 powers, as Robert Mueller has said, and people who are testing the limits of American democracy. I think it's a beautiful day in America, because what we are now faced with is a question. This isn't about Republicans and Democrats. If you believe in the so-called idea of American exceptionalism, then you need to do something very different. The Republican Party, not the Democratic Party, is the one that is on trial today. And I think they will probably be found wanting. And then the real question emerges, which is, what exactly do we have in this country if the President of the United States can flunk the law with impunity?
Well, very well said. A. Scott Bolden, I appreciate it. Glenn Ivey, I appreciate it as well. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks. I want to go to my next story. That is the folks at Pew. Last week, we told you about a new Pew poll, Race in America 2019, which found that the public has negative views of the country's racial progress. And more than half say Donald Trump has made race relations worse. But there was some more data I want to explore. So check this out. Here are the percentages of people who said people acted like they were suspicious of them. Whites, 25%. Asians, 35%. Hispanics, 37%. Blacks, 65%. No other group was higher than 35%, higher than 40%. African Americans were at 65%. The percentage of people who say that people acted like they thought they weren't smart. Whites, 26%. Asians, 39%. Hispanics, 48%. Blacks, 60%. Now check this out. The percentage of people saying that they have been unfairly stopped by police. Whites, 9%. Asians, 16%. Hispanics, 19%. African Americans, 44%. Shireen, what does this say, what it means to be black in America when you see these numbers?
Well, let's just be clear. Like, if you understand this president who has been actually naming himself a white nationalist, we understand why this problem exists. Also, we understand that in this country, the least respected is actually Black Americans in this country, second to Native Americans. And when we talk about these issues, even now as we're talking about the presidency, there are so many people trying to tell Black and brown people who to vote for, and every person they're suggesting is a white male. And that is part of the narrative in this country, that we don't have, that we're not supposed to have say, but people can treat us differently any way they want to, including telling us who to vote for. And that's why we ended up with this president in the first place. And we now have what has been an increase in hate crimes because of this exact same thing. This study is just telling us water is wet. Right, that we already knew as African Americans and Black Americans in this country that we were being discriminated against. And I try to explain to people, no matter what you're talking about, and even including income inequality, no matter what status that Black Americans are in, they still face racism. So the concept that somehow we're going to even this out with income inequality is a fundamental flaw in all of this conversation. But the key to this is we now know we have that information. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to change the systems that we currently have in place, or are we not? Because the criminal justice system, as we just saw with what you just told us, what we just shared about the Mueller report, gives the benefit of the doubt to every white male, even when they're doing criminal acts, except for Black people and Black men in particular.
Alexis, again, when you look at this data, I mean, it speaks volumes to one particular group that is under attack more than any other. When you see those huge gaps between African Americans and everybody else, this is what people have to understand what 400 years of racial strife in America has all about. That even if you are Asian or Latino, you still not Black.
Absolutely. And I think, again, everybody has their different struggles, so I'm not one to downplay the struggles of people of different races, such as Asian or Hispanic. But this information that you presented is not surprising at all. I mean, like you said, there's a history there. And the history not only speaks to how Black people were treated, but also speaks to how Black people are represented. So when we talk about people thinking Black people aren't smart or thinking that they're guilty of a crime, we have to look at the history of what the narrative has been via movies, via minstrelsies, if we're talking history, via just the way that Black people are portrayed. We're portrayed to be unintelligent. You know, how many times they're usually goofy or dumb, or so that type of archetype. So that creates a narrative. And all of these other political people making comments about Black people, assuming that Black people are criminals, assuming that Black people aren't intelligent, when in fact, which isn't even the truth, because there's a high percentage of Black people who are in colleges and other institutions. So it's like, again, we can have all this data that says Black people are doing all of these great things, but what's hard to control is the narrative that's been embedded into American culture since the beginning of American history.
Can I just make one point to make sure that we don't erase Afro-Latinos, please, in this narrative, because they also deal with some of these things as well.
Greg Carr. Again, I think when you look at these numbers, what it says is that Black people, we are in a different category than anybody else. Our history is different. How we have been treated is different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, it's interesting. Segregation, of course, we know persists. Residential segregation, segregation in the schools, segregation, even, as you say, even though being Black crosses across, the Black experience crosses in many ways across economic categories. This survey, as you said earlier, as just heard earlier, says, you know, water is wet. We know that. And we also know that increased contact with people of other races is in many ways the first, second, and third step toward beginning to break down some of these clear errors in thinking from white people in particular. But we know that this country, in its economic system, its public policy, its cultural norms, has maintained and in many ways extended segregation. So when we ask what is the solution to this, and if the solution involves being in closer proximity to each other and dealing with each other more intimately, and I don't mean, you know, in terms of just interpersonal relationships, but in terms of institutional relationships, there's not really a path forward. The other thing I would say, the one path that we do see that's going to be inevitable as the demographics change, and as we know, the children in this country are already over 50% non-white. Ultimately, white people may keep these attitudes that they want, but they keep them at their own economic and political peril because their power is shrinking, not growing.
Scott Bolt, I want to ask you this here. Another thing, another poll looked at how people view the extent of discrimination against certain ethnic groups by other ethnic groups. And this is a chart from the Washington Post, based again on Pew data, shows that white Republicans think they think Blacks face the most discrimination, Hispanic just a little less. But white Republicans think that whites are discriminated against more than Hispanics and almost as much as African Americans. Worse, when you break it down to a lot of discrimination versus some discrimination, white Republicans think whites face a lot of discrimination more than Blacks or Hispanics. This shows how crazy white Republicans are.
Well, it shows also the power of white privilege. The power of white privilege. But more importantly, it shows this, that white people have gotten so comfortable with telling Black people and the world what's racism and what isn't, how they've been discriminated against by reverse racism and reverse discrimination, and that they deeply believe it because it frees them from their guilt of how they have treated people of color for 400 years. That poll is the result of what they've done to free themselves from that guilt and to be able to bastardize racial violence, racial profiling, and racial injustice over the years. So I'm not surprised at that at all. White people really do believe that the browning of America is not only upon them, but they are going to suffer even more because of the browning of America, because they know what they did when they were in the majority. They fear most what people of color are going to do to them when people of color are in the majority. And it's just not true. We are built differently, we think differently, and we want to be fully integrated into what the best of America represents. But that poll shows you what white people really think.
Alexis, 2009, I said we were living in the age of white minority resistance. That white people are walking around scared to death because America is changing. I'm working on a book right now called White Fear, and that's what we're dealing with. But white Republicans actually think that white folks face more discrimination than black people. They are out of their damn mind.
I'm just like, face more discrimination where? I don't understand where that idea comes from. I think it comes from just wanting to have a little bit of a victimhood. It's like, well, what about me? I have issues too, and it's just like, let's not ignore the reality of the situation. Like, this idea that white people face more, again, to trying to change, trying to maintain the narrative that has already existed. This is the 2019 version of the white man's burden, the concept, old school concept that white men had so hard having to teach slaves and Native Americans how to speak English and how to be humane and not be barbaric. This is the 2019 version of it. Like, what is your actual discrimination? That people are saying that black people are speaking out and saying that white supremacy exists? Is that what your burden is? That black people are trying to rise up and go against systematic oppression? Is that what your burden is? So for me, for a white person, if a white person were to say, or a Republican, whoever, that white people face more discrimination than black people, give me some examples. How is that so? When we clearly see incidents where black people are outside having a barbecue and they get the police called. We don't see too many instances where a white person is outside having a cookout and black people are, calling the police, or at Starbucks,
in fact,
black people are calling the police.
In fact, that leads right to our next story, and that is how university students are not happy at all with these white gentrifiers who have been moving into historically black neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. You got white folks walking their dogs on the yard at Howard University, having picnics and just strolling around campus as if it's a damn park. No, it's a college campus. And so we dropped by Howard University to get the thoughts on some students there. And here's what they had to say.
They really don't value the campus and our spaces as much as we do. We hold the yard, like, that's a sacred space for us. And for them to bring their dogs and have their dogs using the restroom on the yard, that is seen as disrespectful. That's just disrespectful to us. And I think if we were to go to spaces like Georgetown, and what if we brought our dogs that ran around Georgetown's campus like that? I don't think it would have the same reaction. And I think locals don't value, people who have moved in do not value the culture, and they don't participate in maintaining the culture that is DC, that is Howard.
It's like a slap in the face. It's like they come in and we can do what we want, in a sense. As far as the go-go music being played in front of Metro PCS, I love how how our people came in droves and everyone came to support, because that man had been playing his music there for years and no one was saying anything. And it wasn't even past 8 or 9 p.m. I think. It was in the daytime. So it's like they feel threatened or entitled when they moved in, and this is really our community in a sense.
Greg Carr, you teach at Howard University. I am volunteering to walk the yard and to call the cops on white folks having picnics and they dogs pissing all over the yard.
Dear brother, I must say that if you call the police on these white people and their dogs, we may then have to go to war because the police might try to arrest you.
Yeah.
I think what we're facing is, of course, white privilege, but also there are convergence of issues we're facing. And I've seen these white folks on the yard. When I see a white person with their dog on Howard's campus, I walk toward them and I purposely stand right in front of them and their dog, daring them to do anything other than continue on their way. Now, I'm sure that they could call the police on me, but I think we see the convergence of things. We're seeing not only the entitlement of whiteness, because these white people will take their dogs anywhere and do anything, but we also see a dog culture. We live in a society where they have gentrified this neighborhood, and you've got what used to be other mixed-use purposes buildings, now high-rent condos, and on the roofs you have dog parks. Yes, parks for their dogs when people don't have places to sleep tonight in the city. So you got that convergence. But the only other thing I would say about this issue of dogs walking around on Howard University's campus, and increasingly with gentrification, I would not be surprised to see them walking on the campus of Tennessee State or Texas Southern or Jackson State or other places. We see our response to this must be to make them so uncomfortable in the space that they begin to avoid. And we can do that quite easily. And I, for one, will be glad to walk with you shoulder by shoulder, brother, and we can stand in front of the Alpha Monument and make sure no dogs violate that space.
Even Omegas. Scott Baldwin, your choice with the Howard Law School there. And this thing really goes beyond Howard University in terms of folks just having picnics and their dogs urinating and pooping on the yard.
Yeah.
What we're seeing all across the country, Scott, we are seeing historically black spaces that have been turned upside down. Luther Campbell talked about in his book on Miami what happened there. We're seeing in Oakland. There was a black church in Oakland that was sued because the white neighbor said, their choir rehearsal was too loud. They were cited many times by the police department saying the choir rehearsal was too loud. The banging of the drums in Harlem, white folks have been complaining, saying, too much noise as well. And we can go down the line. All of these places that have been historical places of black culture is being turned upside down with white folks moving in.
Also burned. Remember, we still have churches burned in Louisiana.
Oh, yeah, certainly. It's interesting that the churches seem to be a magnet point for this. What I mean by that is, you remember 5-10 years ago, Roland, in Washington, D.C., where I live, that the churches in and around downtown were having challenges with new white residents who were challenging them on Sunday regarding parking, if you will. Now, historically in D.C.
Scott, that's not 5-10 years ago. Now, Scott, we had our State of the Union event at Shiloh Baptist Church last year. They told us that they are catching hell because the white neighbors do not like the cars parked there on Bible study as well as on Sunday morning.
It's ongoing then. But when you talk about class of cultures, black churches on Sunday, there's not enough parking on the street by the city in Washington. And so historically, black parishioners will park behind each other. They will block each other in because nobody's leaving the pulpit and nobody's leaving the church until church is over. And that's just something that's been going on in our historical black communities in Washington. And white people moved in and their cars got blocked. And then they started to complain. They called the police. They started talking to their congressman about changing the parking rules and all these other things, which would be disruptive to historical black culture, whether it's right or wrong. And so instead of white privilege moving in and trying to dictate new norms in our black communities, I don't have a problem with people that don't look like me coming into our neighborhoods, but come into our neighborhoods and try to integrate into these neighborhoods and try to build a positive relationship versus dictating what white privilege is going to do and tell you simply because you're not used to that norm in your community. That's the real problem with gentrification.
But Shireen, the reality is whiteness has always been about telling everybody else
what to do.
Way or the highway.
Right.
Exactly.
I agree. I just say they shouldn't be doing that.
But
that's a real problem.
The key to this is that if you even look at some of the stuff that's happening, what just happened in New York, they changed the school system so that all children are treated equally in the school system, and white people were still upset about that. Why? Because they were instituting like their own segregation in an urban environment. So we're talking about the North versus the South, and the way the white people treat black and brown people in this country, it's been the same. They think they can tell us what to do. We are not to tell them what to do, but they think that they can tell us what to do. So whenever they show up, they're showing up saying, hey, this is the way we operate, so you need to operate like us, and not the other way around. And that is historically not only what's happened in this country overall, but if you think about what's going on with this current president, it's the exact same thing. It's like, we want you out, we want you to either do it our way and integrate our way, or don't come here. If you're not happy, leave. It's like, no, seriously, if you're not happy and you don't like brown people around you, you leave. You go home. Like, the thought that you're telling us that we are supposed to somehow change our own cultural narrative narrative to fit them, that's part of the challenge. And it's always been the case. Most people who go to work every day are told that they have to go to work every day and keep their culture at the door, while everyone else, i.e. white people, get to have their culture run amok, and we're supposed to figure out how to navigate in that space like that instead of us bringing our full selves in, not only in work, but every place we are, including where we live now, including the school systems now. That's the fundamental problem of where we are at this moment. And yes,
last comment. I'm gonna go to Greg Carr. I'm gonna go to Alexis. Last comment on this, Greg Carr. We're also seeing this. I was on Twitter where they said Ralph Abernathy Way in Atlanta. The white folks are calling some other names. They don't want to acknowledge that. In my hometown of Houston, 3rd Ward, very well known, home of Jack Gates High School, Texas Southern University. White folks moving in, calling it Midtown. That ain't Midtown.
Yeah.
3rd Ward is right next to downtown. It's called 3rd Ward. But again, though, so what you see is you have this black identity. And so when white gentrifiers start rolling in, all of a sudden it's, no, we're going to rename this. And in fact,
DC has it too.
What are they trying to rename something in Harlem as well? They didn't want to call it Harlem, trying to call it something else.
They changed New Rock City, New Rochelle, right? All the examples, even here, Noma, right? We have all these different names instead of what the existing names are. But yes, absolutely, they come in and they're like, we're going to change this to be different so that other people want to show up. But yes, it's like, and also the way they've taken over Harlem. I was born and raised in Harlem. The stuff that I see that's going on in Harlem is nothing that I have ever grown up with. So it is clear they come in, and even people who have lived there for years, for 30, 40 years, are being told that they don't belong there, while people are moving into their buildings and quote unquote fixing everything up. But somehow all of a sudden they don't have permission to be there.
But
Greg
Roland,
Carr,
is a real issue what black people are going to do about this?
Hold on, Scott. Hold on, Greg Carr.
Doing anything about this?
No, I agree with what Scott just said, what you just said, brother. What are we going to do about it? I mean, in a stone's throw from Howard is Lincoln Temple United Church of Christ. That's where they started the American Negro Academy. Paul Robeson, Martin Luther King, Marion Anderson, all saying that the congregation dwindled to the point, black congregation, where now the building is for sale. It'll be condos soon. And so, I don't have any problem with white people renaming everything. I really don't. You know why? Because when we see that, the question we have to ask ourselves is the question Scott just raised. What are we going to do? What we see is black political power in these cities the keys were handed over to black people when white people didn't want to live here. And then they took the tax base and the revenue generation out of the cities. We put these cities in play, and then now they're coming back because they want to be back in these cities. Well, as they come back, you don't welcome them with open arms. At this point, it's a declaration of war. And when you're at war, you got to act like you're at war. I'm not talking about killing people. I'm not talking about harming people. But I'm talking about being a whole lot less cooperative and a whole lot less welcoming. And that means city council people, that means ward people and alder people need to now take an adversarial attitude toward these people who are trying to stop black worshipers from parking in front of their churches and are trying to now push us out of these neighborhoods. If you want this space, you get it 1 inch at a time, and we're going to fight you every inch of the way.
Yeah.
Alexis,
well, that mentality
comment.
Isn't always present in our black community.
Hold on, Scott. Alexis.
The reason why this is even able to happen, it comes down to the idea that black people aren't supposed to have anything. So anything that black people have, whether it's a neighborhood, whether it's a school, it's up for grabs in a lot of eyes of white people because, again, it's the idea that blacks aren't supposed to have anything. And, of course, some people are going to downplay and say, well, it's just dogs on a college campus, or we just didn't want the choir playing music too loud. But no, the concept really comes down to don't come in my house telling me how to run it. And so when it comes to gentrification or white people moving in and slowly but surely pushing black people out, that's a problem. And when, like someone said earlier today, don't come along like for Howard's campus, don't know the culture there, thinking that you can just do whatever you want because you feel entitled. You feel you have the right to do so. That's an expression of white supremacy. You come onto that yard, you don't know the culture there, the students there, anything. Howard has a lot of history. As a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, where my organization was founded, it was Howard University. It has a lot of history there. So I know for me, I don't even go to Howard, but if I go on there on that campus and I observe the culture there, I see a dog pissing on the Alpha Kappa Alpha tree, that's a problem. And so for me, it speaks to the fact that we're not supposed to have anything. We're not supposed to be able to value anything. And when the things we value are disrespected, we're supposed to not sit around and not say anything. And I think that the solution is we cannot take this sitting down. If we continue to not speak out and not say anything, it will continue to happen.
Yeah, but Roland.
All right,
why
Scott.
aren't-
Okay,
why-
Scott. Now you can talk.
Okay, why aren't you talking about what black people, elected officials, business leaders, and community folks and church leaders aren't doing about this? Because it's not like
That's
we're
right.
being just walked over and run over. Our mentality simply isn't to fight this, at least in any type of organized way. And so if our elected officials are giving our communities and our cultures away, if our churches and our community people can talk about the problem but aren't doing anything about economic empowerment, political justice, social justice, and taking a stand against these infringements in our communities, we are as much to blame as white supremacy is, or as white privilege is that comes in, and we allow them to do that. That's a broader issue in regard to Black America and what we're willing to fight for, and whether we've gotten too comfortable with where we are and not willing to fight.
Well, it's also why I've also said that if the land is for sale, we should be buying it. So that's
exactly. And we ain't buying it.
Speaking of black culture and not being afraid to show blackness, Beyoncé, of course, performed last year at Coachella. An amazing show, 2 performances, and she really brought the HBCU, the band, the culture experience to the forefront in those 2 concerts. Well, it has now been made into a Netflix documentary. It is called Homecoming, and she talked about in that documentary. I actually downloaded it and watched it on the plane flying here to Las Vegas. She talked about, of course, the years where she would have been in college. She was on the road, but going to Texas Southern University, visiting HBCUs, going to Battle of the Bands, and how she wanted to bring the essence of black life, dance, and music to that white festival, Coachella. All right, you can check out Homecoming on Netflix. And Scott Bolden, just for you, the person who led all of those dancers and all of those steppers and Alpha Man. Just
No.
You know.
It was a Noop. I saw the Noops on there.
No,
No, I saw that. I saw some canes and everything. I was stepmaster for Morehouse, Fall 81 and Fall 84.
Scott,
I just want to share that with your audience.
Scott, we all know a Kappa will never, ever lead anything. Just so you know, and Greg Carr, my alpha brother, I interviewed that young brother on the Tom Joyner Morning Show. I'm going to pull his name up in a second. So it was an alpha who was showing them how to do the step.
Yes. He had a cane. He was lying to you on national radio, man. You got to check who your sources are who you put on the radio.
Stop talking. Greg, show some love to Rashid, Joseph,
it's
Jamal.
Because we all know that Queen Bee and her remarkable, she's really reinventing what it means to be a culture warrior in the 21st century, and she used to be getting full credit for that. The students can't stop talking about this. But, there's a reason why that sister wore gold out in the desert, brother. Because we know that gold is a regal color. And so when you see Beyonce resplendent, and there's a reason she had that ancient Egyptian headdress in the advertisement. So the Alphas had the good sense to put the Sphinx in the middle of our shield for a reason, brother. Because we understand that being the first of all, we like Beyonce have a responsibility to make sure that wherever we go, we spread that black culture. So we welcome all the other groups, but let's be clear. In all seriousness,
Shireen and Alexis, even though her dad is an Omega, we know Jesus was an Alpha. So just y'all final thoughts on Beyonce's Homecoming. Alexis, go ahead.
Baychella, boy.
She did look good in that black and gold. I got to concede that.
Yes, you had to concede it. Shireen?
Yeah, she did look good.
No, look. I went to Howard, so I'm a HBCU. I would never change anything, but I will tell you one thing for sure. When I saw Baychella, I was like, home, right? Like, this is my culture on fleek, on a national stage, in front of white people who could never even understand half of what was going on in those, in those sequences. Wherever they were, I was like, Bay, like, I know you didn't go, but good, good on you on showing our culture in a way that was respectful, but also gave all the nuance of it. And I was just happy to see that. And I will like not only the whole Netflix thing, you got people trying to repeat what she did. Like, you cannot repeat what a black woman does, showing her culture in its entirety. So stop. There's no other Cellas. There's only Baychella.
And of course, the final comment here, she is from Houston. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Don't hate, Scott.
Here we go.
That's why I'm representing my Rockets. Beyonce, we from H-Town. She visited Texas Southern University, the trade, 3rd Ward. I'm just saying. All right, let me give a shout out to Alexis, Serene, Scott, Greg, everybody. Thanks for being on the show today. Sorry for all the technical difficulties, but glad we got it all in. Folks, again, if you want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered, please go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. Don't forget, every Friday, of course, we run the video of all of our powers. And also, if you are a member of the fan club, you should have gotten an email today with your promo code. And so we're going to start beginning on Monday. I'm going to announce some products we have for sale that you're going to be able to get a 20% discount. Yeah, I decided to go with 20%. A 20% discount if you're a member of the Bring the Funk fan club. And so if you're not a member, go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com and become a member of the fan club. And we certainly appreciate you joining. You can pay via Cash App, PayPal, Square as well. All right, folks, I'm here in Las Vegas. We have a National Association of Black Journalists board meeting. I'm Vice President Digital, so that's why I'm here. I'll be doing the show from here tomorrow as well. And so we'll stay on top of the news, and I shall see you guys tomorrow, and I'll still be repping H-Town. We beat the hell out of Utah last night, going up 2-0. I'm just saying, don't hate, congratulate. And Scott, I might let you celebrate. Holla! You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.